But at the same time, I'm also aware of how humble the beginnings were. And you have to start somewhere. So I became a believer in this slow laddering strategy, as I call it, where you take one step at a time, you move up the value curve.
So welcome to Outliers. This is a podcast with Outliers. I'm really excited, for this particular episode of Outliers, to be sitting across the table, actually on the same side, with Sridhar Vembu, founder of Zoho, and someone who I first, I discovered, I can say that, in 2010 when I was with Economic Times. And I learned about this company called Zoho, whose founder had a very different model and approach. And that's not just not about bootstrapping, but the way Zoho would go out and recruit its programmers, from government schools, sometimes dropouts, and turn them into great coders who would build products that would compete with Microsoft, Google. That forced me to, travel Chennai in 2010 and meet you, Sridhar. I still remember that meeting.
Yes.
And it's taken all
It's been a long time, huh?
long time indeed.
I'm sure you noticed a little more gray hair.
Yeah, gray hair. Gray hair, the moustache, the little French beard. So, yeah, signs of... also, one of the things I noticed over past 2 years is Zoho as a brand started getting communicated more aggressively. I guess now you're, over 30 million users?
30 million users, yes.
Yeah, so... I have always noticed a great hunger in people I meet in the ecosystem who want to learn about what you did, why and how.
Okay.
Simple 3 questions. So if you could just kick this off, Sridhar, if you can start with the early journey in building Zoho or AdventNet
Right.
for that
At that
matter.
time it's called, yeah.
Yeah, and why did you do things the way you did?
Yeah.
And start with that, and then we can get into some more specific questions.
So let's go back. When I finished my degree from IIT Madras, I went to the US to pursue graduate school. I went to Princeton. And I started, even at that time, whenever I come across something there in the US, I'll ask, why don't we have it in India? Why can't we have this type of a company or any of these? And about 94, I finished my PhD. I joined Qualcomm for a job, and that hunger increased, that questioning, why don't we have a Qualcomm in India? Why don't we have, a Honda in India? I started reading a lot about business, and to me that, I also realized, look, India, we have 1 billion people, now 1.2. At that time it was going to be 1 billion, now we have crossed it, right? And I realized that being a poor nation and not having all these businesses are 2 sides of the same coin. If we had all these types of businesses, we won't be poor anymore, right? So the way out of poverty for our nation has to be in creating so many of these businesses. Sustainable, long-term, durable, all of these. And then I started, approximately it was about 95 or 96, as I was reading about a lot of this, I came across the biography of Honda, Mr. Honda, and that created a powerful impact on me, because it was a moment I realized, what humble roots he came from. He was actually a bicycle mechanic, bicycle repair, as a teenager, and that's how he got started. He never went to college, he never had a degree. And then he started, making bicycle parts and attaching an electric motor or something to it. And that's how Honda was born, really. He started making parts for other companies. I believe he was a part supplier to Toyota at one point. And it was born in a rural area in Japan. with background, with no, typical academic background we think of, and how this man was able to create a global multinational from the roots in rural Japan. And it had a powerful impact on me. I said, why aren't these things being done in India? Well, and we have a vast population, so many districts, so many areas. I mean, still maybe 70% of Indians are rural. And why doesn't this happen? What is it a problem? And conventional explanations, oh, we don't have the know-how. No, you create the know-how. I mean, in 1953, when Honda was born, he did not know how to create an automotive engine. He could not have known, right? So he created the know-how. So you create those skill sets. And one of these things is I never ask, why doesn't this business exist? I think, why can't we go create it? And similarly, when I'm sitting in traffic, I don't curse the traffic. I'm asking, how can we avoid this? How can we put employees somewhere so that we don't add to the problem? Because I'm thinking, how do we be part of the solution rather than continue to be part of the problem and cursing the problem? We get into that mindset too much, and we have to think in our little way, how can we be part of the solution? And for me, at that time, it was clear that you have to create these long-term institutions. But you have to get started somewhere. So I was aware that a company like Honda is an institution. But at the same time, I'm also aware of how humble the beginnings were. And you have to start somewhere. So I became a believer in this slow laddering strategy, as I call it, where you take one step at a time, you move up the value curve, the ability to create more and more sophisticated product offerings, like how the bicycle to the automotive superpower now. And Honda along the way made, we still buy petrol generators. I mean, we are kerosene generators. You see in shops, that's Honda. The same company makes Acura luxury cars and kerosene generators, right? In developing countries. So it's clear that there has to be an operating vision behind all this. And I realized that something like that can be done in India. And we can do this in software. Why software? Well, it doesn't require much capital. And at that time, we are a very capital deficient nation. It's not very easy to find money in India. So I said we have to do a very capital efficient business. Software is one where only your skills matter. You don't need capital. So that's how we got started. Along with my friend Tony Thomas, my brother Kumar, Shekhar, we all came together and we started this. It was a very humble beginning. Even though we had a long-term dream, our immediate goal is, of course, survival, putting food on the table, as it must be for any new business, right? The think globally and act locally. Here you can say, think long-term but act short-term. That's how you convert that in from space to a time perspective. Yeah. Even though we had a long-term dream and a vision, we still have to figure out how to eat today and this month and this quarter and this year, right? So that's how it translated it. And to me, looking at Japan also is an inspiration for start with humble beginnings, start with small products, easy to do, focus on niche markets where it's easy to penetrate. There's not a lot of major big companies, lots of money flowing into those markets. So it's easy to create a small niche. That's what we focused on. All those were vital teaching experiences, also talent creation experiences. A lot of the people who cut their teeth building such small products today are very senior execs in Zoho managing vast development teams. But those early beginnings, the small scale experiences were vital in their growth.
So what were some of the early product ideas that came to your mind? And how did you pick your early ideas? And what went behind it?
In fact, almost I would say I didn't even pick. My friend Tony, who's a very close friend, who's actually our Zoho Eastern or board of directors. He's a key advisor for me now, one of our founders. He actually had a network management experience in Bell Labs. He knew how to manage networks. And he had developed a small library for managing networks and a software library. And that became like a sort of the accidental beginning of the company in the sense that that took off. We put it out and that had some interest from customers. It turned out to be that small niche that from which we could grow into a first early revenue and get beginning of a company, and then iterate that model in progressively larger and larger and larger markets. This idea itself is very sound. I mean, you look at our Dhirubhai Ambani's beginning and how applying that relentless focus and backward integration from sari to polyester, polyester to polyester yarn to petrochemicals. I mean, you see that backward integration. Every step he is expanding the market footprint. That idea is not new. We applied it in a different context. We moved into small software markets and we served printer vendors, for example. Our initial focus was printer vendors. I personally have made a lot of sales calls and convinced customers to adopt us. You know, these are companies like Minolta, Kyosan, Ricoh, Xerox was an early customer, and then expand the footprint. So that is how we found our footing in the beginning. Within about 2 years, the first 1 year, you know, we were treading water. We made some money, but tiny amounts of money. We were, as they call, the current term is ramen profitable, right? Ramen noodle profitable. We live frugally, so we have some money. But next year it got better, and the next year it got better. In about 2 years, we knew, there's a business here. And that's, ever since we've been at it, and just progressive stages of expansion.
How was the early team? And how did you pick the early team? Who were the first set of people you hired and why?
Well, before I hired, I mean, these are my co-founders, and we came together. You know, say we were fortunate in that we all share a common core philosophy. Everyone, even today, I mean, Zoho is a much bigger company, and my co-founders, none of them have a flashy lifestyle. Everyone actually lives pretty much a good middle class life, like we have always lived. I mean, no one has any expensive taste, anything. And this is important because if, say, one of the founders insisted on, I need liquidity right now, I want to enjoy a lifestyle, the company could have gone in a different direction, right? Because a lot of times in startups, any of these, it's these philosophical disagreements that cause, really translate into operating issues or whatever, right? Or direction, strategy, all that. We actually agreed on core philosophies. Which is that we want to be long-term in this. It was probably about 99, I remember, an acquisition proposal came for our company. This is in Silicon Valley at that time. And we were offered $25 million. We acquired, and we had a 1 or 2 million revenue probably at that time. 25 million seems like a large sum of money for
even
people.
Today.
Even today, but it was 99, right? And I remember I assembled our founders, and I said, who wants to sell? Raise your hand. Nobody did. Then I said, if this whole thing crashes and burns, we amount to nothing, would any of you have any regret? No regrets. That's the key, right? You turn down the thing, would you later regret it, right? Are you going to regret it? No regrets. It's okay if it crashes and burns. We will continue to live this way. No, nobody is going to starve to death. We will continue our current lifestyle, which is we are comfortable with. Nobody is in this for upgrading our lifestyle. There's a mission-driven thing, so no regrets. Then I said, forever we'll not sell. Okay, today we'll make a binary decision. Forever, there's no question. It's sort of like saying forever I'll remain a bachelor type of a thing, right? It's the same thing here. This is the last time we'll ask this question. The last time we've answered it, we won't sell. That's it. That was done in 99. We never look back.
So acquisition was one thing.
Yeah.
The other thing is your philosophy on the venture money. Why do you hate VCs?
I don't hate. I mean, contrary to, look, there is a critique, there's an intellectual critique of venture capital. It's not about, I don't hate them personally. I have a lot of friends, good friends in VC. My problem comes from, first the term venture capitalist, you take this, right? I mean, I respectfully offer a better term, it's money broker. Because, you take institutional money, you place it with someone, and you take an annual commission. Let's call it what it is. It's commission. The 220, the 2% is commission, right? Intrinsically, when you're operating with other people's money, you have time horizons there. You have to show a return, all of that. So the model compels them to act in certain ways. It's not about personal. It's not about my personal values. It's like when I have adopted a model, I have to operate in a certain way. And here, I've raised institutional money with maybe a 10-year lifespan, which means that when I invest in something, I have only for 10 years, I get paid the 2%. That's a typical fund life cycle. And I have to expect a liquidity or an exit from my portfolio company within that 7, 8, whatever years, right? 10 years, my fund itself is maybe 12 years nowadays, 10, 12 years. So that creates a certain compulsion in these companies to grow faster. You can't take 10 years. You have to do it in 5 years. Try to compress it in 3, right? This has consequences. Every business, this thing, I call it there's a certain natural speed limit, intrinsic speed limit that arises. So where does that come from? That's your maturity of your products, maturity of your team, maturity of your leadership. I run a company with 5,000 employees. If I had to run this 15 years ago, I would have sucked at it. I wouldn't have known how to do it. So you grow into these things. Literally, you are growing into these things. There is a certain speed limit of this growth. If you try to push it faster, just like in the road analogy, you get accidents. You will get accidents, and you'll crash into people. You will cause harm. So that's why it's important to respect those natural speed limits. It may differ from business to business. It depends on the landscape. Just like in driving condition, you have a beautiful highway, sunny, visibility is indifferent. You can go faster. But if you have foggy conditions, night, lot of crowds around, you want to go slower, right? The same thing with growth. It differs from company to company, context to context, market to market, all of that. But you have to know intrinsically. But VC time cycles don't work that way. You are the same 7, 8, 10-year lifespan, regardless of the business. But now come to the Indian context, what I said about Honda earlier. If Honda had been a VC-funded company in Japan in 1953, by about 65, they would have declared failure, or maybe a mediocre success. Because by 65, they hadn't done any magic yet, 12 years into it. They survived, they had something, but they were not magical yet. All that happened subsequently, right? It's similar to us. We are in 21st year, we are launching Zoho 1 today. Our biggest product launch in our history happens in the 21st year. I'm proud of it because, it takes that long in India because we had to create the talent pool. We have to create all the expertise, cloud, security, all of that. We cannot just summon it into being. We look at Silicon Valley and we think those companies grow so fast. But there is an existing context. You go back to Cisco, they hired people from prior generation, HP, Intel, all of that. Then you come to Google and Yahoo, they hired from SGI and all those companies that existed earlier. And then you take Facebook, they hired from Google. So the moment Facebook takes off, they can hire 300 engineers with core skills from Yahoo and Google, all of those. So in a sense, Facebook depends on the existence of those earlier companies. When you hear about the PayPal mafia, that means that 10 years later, the PayPal's existence 10 years before made a difference. Without having created a PayPal, how can we have a PayPal mafia, right? That is the problem here. We have actually, somehow we think that we could leapfrog all those phases. And VCs think that thought, and I disagree with that. I don't believe that it's even possible. I think that you have to go through these stages of evolution. You cannot short-circuit them. Just because your financial timelines call for it, you cannot. Cultures and skill sets, all that don't evolve that rapidly. And Silicon Valley has an overwhelming advantage. It can import people from anywhere in the world, right? And in India, we have to live with our talent here, and we have to create that. We are still a developing country. The meaning of that is our fellow Indians don't have all the skill sets yet, and you have to create that. And you have to have patience to create that. So if you have a 4-year, 5-year time span, you don't have any of that patience. You have to operate in that hyper speed, and it's not possible in every sector, and particularly in creating durable companies, durable technologies, long term. All of that require the time element.
I'm really enjoying this, Sridhar. The choices that you made, one, or for example, saying no to an acquisition or no to so-called venture capital money, or sorry, the term that that you used, did that choice making make journey tougher, existential crisis in some ways?
Never. We never actually ever. We could go out and raise $1 billion today if we wanted. So it's by choice. We're not raising it. As I said, even if I critique VCs, if you can show them a good return, they'll fund it. That's how it is. It's not personal. It's not like, hey, you criticized us, so therefore we won't fund you. That's not how it works. You show them you can make them money, they'll fund you. That's how VCs work. And that's, I respect that. But as I said, the philosophy has to be different operating in a context like India. It has to be different. Japan, Germany, these are good role models. There are 100-year-old, 150-year-old German companies, Swiss companies that are leaders, world leaders in their respective fields, multiple generations. We have to learn from those in India. We have to create those companies here.
Sridhar, one thing I'm picking is the kind of examples you're talking about. Because I have been really trying to understand the source of your conviction. It's one thing to decide, it's another thing to stay on that path for so long. Is that
the Japanese, Germans, Swiss, a lot of inspiration for me from all those companies.
They are the right role models.
Role models for India, because see, think about it. We are starting with, we have to create those skill sets. We have to create. Part of the reason is also, see, America is an immigrant nation. India is not. We have to be, because we have 1.2 billion people, we have to figure out how we create opportunities here. And we haven't created that. Where is the question of immigration here, right? We haven't created the opportunities enough for our own fellow citizens here. So it's not a question of, if you need this security expert, let's get this from Russia. If you need this expert, let's get from Slovenia. I've met, just last week I met an engineer in a startup from Slovakia in Silicon Valley. I was thinking, man, you just assemble from all over the world and you create. That possibility exists in a few places on earth. By its nature, America is that. Maybe Trump will change it, I don't know. But by its nature, that's how the country is. India is a different nation. That's why I look to Japan, look to Germany as inspiration. That's why I use that.
So if other thing people say is the context in which a company is born, and that also determines what philosophies you embrace. Right. From that. If you were born with Zoho today, would you have taken the same path?
These are thought experiments where it's difficult to say or no. My philosophical outlook did not change, and I say that even now, I challenge people. You think about, there are entire states in India where there's not even a single technology company, single $1 million technology company. We're not talking about $1 billion technology company, $1 million technology company. Entire states, large states that exist right now. And there's millions of kids are born there. There's opportunity. So we have to think those thoughts. How do we create, companies there? How do you create opportunities? Because a company means employment opportunities, an ecosystem. We have to create all those. And only with the long-term outlook, the outlook that I'm married to this is my life. That's the only way to create those things. Honda I talked about. He ran the company towards the end of his life, and then it passed on to a next generation. He created all those leadership. So the company, 30 years after the founder passed away, it's still a vibrant company. India needs those types of companies.
It's a very important point.
It's it's very critical for our future as a nation.
I'm only focusing on the first half before I get to the next half about the recent competition and other lessons. In those early years of building Zoho, AdventNet, and Zoho later, what are key lessons that you could share for anyone who is starting up?
Yeah, so these are not some big grand lessons here. Be frugal, look for where there's opportunity, look for. I actually remember early days, like around the time we were operating in these niches, there was a massive internet boom, .com boom happening. I stayed away from it because I realized these companies are raising 20 million, 50 million and burning it, and we can't afford it right now. We can't go into a pissing contest with them. So we stayed away from some of those. People would have said, hey, if you had entered that, maybe it would be bigger. But we won't be the same company. If we had entered that, we don't have all the expertise immediately. And if you wanted to do it in India, that would have been impossible. Then we would say, we can't find the talent in India, therefore we relocated to Silicon Valley or something. That's a different company. It won't be this company. It will be a different company. To create this company, I had to think that way. And so that frugality, that looking for niche, those opportunities, we remained at the edge of things and looking in a way. But that suited us because I felt that that's the way to create, long-term powerhouses. All of these progress happens at the margin, not at the center. So you have to go from the margin towards the center. You can see the Zoho suite, that's how it has been. We have taken from the margins of software, we're going to the central problems of software.
And a lot of people also talk about Zoho in the context of software products in India. Was there a template for you to, when it comes to building a product? Because primarily India has been a services nation, and that's why the examples you are taking, you have not taken even a one software services company for India for obvious reasons. But how did you go about thinking of products?
Yeah. So this again, we had to figure these out from scratch. And our early efforts were kind of amateurish. And we learned by doing, we learned by making mistakes, all of that. And I was still aware that quality is only going to come from that painful, painstaking process of learning. I was never faced by the fact that today it's amateurish. That was not a problem. I said, we are going to improve. We're going to learn from this. We'll do our next version better, right? So that was the mindset, that was the thing. And I'll give you some core lessons there. Take project management in software. I learned early on that traditional belief in software, particularly in the services industry, is you get a set of requirements, you create a schedule or a project plan, you execute to that plan. And this analogy, trains running on time, is often used there, where you got to keep the train running on time. When it comes to a software product, that's a completely wrong analogy to apply. And the reason for that is simple. The analogy, it's not like running a train on an existing track. That's not what software product is. It's more of cutting a path through an unknown terrain, through a jungle, through mountains, and laying the new tracks, and then running the train on it. It's a different challenge.
Yeah.
It's a totally different challenge when you think about it. One is very predictable, measurable. And this one is subject to, you have to improvise on the spot. You're coming with a problem. There is twists and turns in the terrain. You have to you go on one path, you say, this won't work, scrap it, go on an alternative path. Any notion of a schedule goes for a toss. in fact, this was an early realization. As early as maybe 2002 or 3, I came upon this profound observation that software product schedules are not really computable or trackable that way. So you cannot create ahead of time, next 3 months, next 2 years we'll launch this product and this is how all the things are going to be. Instead, what we do is, we start working on it, and then as we go along, we improvise. We see milestones. We look at the software, we use it, we think that this doesn't work, these parts don't work. You have to go redo this. So that whole idea that you write down a complicated spec requirements and then execute a plan, you have to get over that mindset. It does not work in software products. Or really any kind of high-tech product, it doesn't work.
The final questions in this section is because of the choices you made in terms of the philosophies and all that, you would only attract a certain kind of talent, number one. Number two, your ability. A lot of people also look at entrepreneurship as wealth creation for good or bad reasons. I'm not getting into that. What do you think of that, and what do you think of your ability to?
Well, see, there is real wealth creation, and there's financial wealth creation, right? A lot of these two notions have been confused for quite a while. In fact, segues to a different field. We have now globally have got into this mindset that wealth means financial wealth. That's completely not true. I mean, we're measuring it by stock market valuation, bond, this and that. But in reality, wealth means, physical plant and knowledge, capital, all of those, culture. And I mean, hypothetical example, right?
Sure.
You take a city of 500,000 people, two cities. One of them has a GDP per capita $30,000. Other has a GDP per capita $5,000. You think one is rich, the other is sort of middle thing. But suppose I added context. One of them has a murder rate that is 10 times other. Which one would you consider more wealthy now? Suddenly it confused the picture now. All this changed. One of them has 40% of the kids born out of wedlock. The other one has 0%. You see, what is wealth now? Suddenly your notions of what is wealth, it changes now. Suddenly which one would you rather live in? Would you live in a place with 10 times the murder rate? Would you live in a place where maybe 10% of the population could be in the criminal justice system? All of those. GDP suddenly becomes, the GDP is not telling me something very important about this. So it cannot be all. Unfortunately, in the last part, particularly 40, 50 years, this is a Milton Friedman world in a way. Milton Friedman, look, he's a great economist. I'm an admirer, but he was profoundly wrong on one thing. He said that the entire purpose of a company is to create wealth for shareholders, or to focus on profit, create wealth for shareholders. I say bullshit. Professor Friedman cannot decide for me what my purpose as a businessman ought to be. Just like I cannot decide for Professor Friedman what his life's purpose ought to be. The whole idea of, you go back to, on the other hand, someone like Hayek, you cannot question the motivation of why somebody operates. You cannot say your motivation ought to be profit. Who says my motivation ought to be this or ought to be that? My motivations are my own, right? Unfortunately, we have taken that Friedman thing as a dogma, and all business has to be focused on only financial value creation. It's profoundly wrong. This is not how the Germans or the Swiss or the Japanese have operated. Look, money is a fuel. I mean, publisher O'Reilly had this great quote. He said, when you go on a tour in your car, of course you need to make sure you don't run out of gas, so you need to know where the next gas station is and you have to fill it up. But your tour purpose is not to visit gas stations. So as he said, life is not a tour of gas stations. That's the same thing with money, right? Money is a means to an end. But you have the ends beyond just going to money. So a good life. So it goes back again, what is a good life? From Buddha to Aristotle to Plato, all of them have pondered on these questions. These are not new questions. So we have to have a notion of what is a good life. And my notion of that is that you have to have enough for people to have a good life, meaning everyday needs are met, and you eliminate the common hassles of life, all of this. But to me, it's not, I don't want to be driving a Ferrari in Chennai streets. That's not to me a good life. I'd much rather go solve a problem, or how do we solve a traffic problem? That's to me a good life. It creates more, happiness for me. So that's how I look at life.
So, what is other thing is the issue, the topic of culture, And how do you describe Zoho's culture? Now, you're saying you're a company of 5,000 people. From then to now, and how do you describe Zoho's culture? How do you preserve it? And
Yeah, see, one of the Zoho is I like to think of ourselves as a modest, humble company inside. It's an unassuming culture. I mean, you don't see these big egos anywhere, and we want to keep it that way. I mean, everyone goes by a name, not sir, all of that. Particularly Indian culture, that's important. And second, we don't make the status distinctions among employees. People get paid what according to their contribution. That doesn't mean there's some status distinctions in the company. That's something that we avoid. And because of the growth we have had, it's a very youthful company. I mean, you come and see it, you'll see the energy, and that brings its own energy. So it's energetic and without those pretensions of anything. In fact, within Zoho, we always tease each other on how we suck. That's a good way to think about it. I don't want to ever think that we have achieved something great. How we suck is how we talk internally. People, in a jovial way, not in a blame way, and people will always point to, bug in this product, bug in our product, this and that, and that's a good culture. And we have a thing that we don't want to penalize someone for telling the truth. Yeah. If something we do sucks, say it sucks. It's important. So that truth telling. Once you have that, once you avoid this ego, it goes back to Buddha, right? Ego is the root of, the root of our suffering. We can somehow, purge it out of our thing. Even that earlier question about wealth. What is the meaning of wealth? Do I want to show off to other people? Is that wealth? That's not the wealth I'm interested in. Wealth means that, it's commonly in our country, we have actually not understood the Buddha at all. He didn't say, renounce everything to end suffering. He said, do it in moderation. He didn't say, go to the forest, live like a monk, deny yourself everything. Don't kill yourself, seeking enlightenment. But be moderate. Moderation in all things. That's the same thing here. Moderation in even our enjoyment of the pleasures of life, the good things of life. That's how we see it.
Thanks, Sridhar. This ends the first part. If you want to grab some water, please do. Yeah. I'll be done in another maybe 25, 30 minutes. The first time we met, 2000.
2010.
2010, sorry. Clearly the unassuming culture was there. And past 2-3 years, I noticed a lot more aggression when it comes to communicating the Zoho brand. So I think in this part, the next 20-30 minutes, I really want to understand the enterprise software landscape globally. How is it competing with your Microsofts to Googles of the world? What have been some of the key achievements or failures on that front from Zoho's point of view? And get into more recent landscape. So how has it been, Sridhar, competing with them or building products that compete with them?
There's a fundamentally different vision here, right? We are, at our heart, we are an Indian company, and we are well aware of our landscape, our context around us. And while in the US, a Salesforce can charge $200 per month, it might even be reasonable in some context. Some companies can afford it. But the number of companies that can afford it in India is minuscule, tiny, that kind of pricing. So they'll solve it through one-on-one negotiation, meaning if you ask hard, they'll give you a discount. And if you point to Zoho, they'll give you a discount. That's how they operate, which is deeply unfair when you think about it. That means you are penalizing the customer who's not asking you about Zoho. We don't like all those practices. We don't like that way of doing business. We want to treat our customer fairly. They come to us, they know they are getting a fair price. We won't take advantage of them. And particularly in the Indian context, it has to be very, very affordable, super affordable. I mean, look, we are a country with $2,000 per capita GDP. Well, the developed world, you're talking minimum 25,000, 30,000. So it's 15x. You know. So we have to create companies here that can serve our needs at price points we can afford and spread technology. I mean, in that sense, you look at the tremendous job our cell phone carriers have done. And thanks to, of course, the Chinese, the smartphones we enjoy at unbelievable prices today, right? It's great. And this is something that I praise the Chinese for, because so much of the living standard we enjoy today is because of those, the Chinese have worked hard to grant it to us. But we have to give them something in return, right? What do we do? We import all this. What do we do in return? We have to create these companies that create these affordable products, high quality products, and offer it to the world, so that we can enjoy the fruits of the rest of the world can offer it to us. So I believe in trade, but we have to also be able to participate in it, give something. And in that sense, our difference with the enterprise software world is that they are treating software as though it is some kind of a scarce commodity. It is not. Once created, software it can be replicated, ubiquitous, right? But they are pricing it as though it's scarce. And then they are spending most of that money on customer acquisition. You're creating an artificial scarcity and then spend most of your money persuading the customer why the artificial scarcity exists. I say, tear down that barrier, remove the artificial barrier, and create at a super affordable price and expand the market considerably, substantially, tenfold expansion. I mean, today in the cloud, there's maybe about 50 million paying subscribers across all the cloud companies together, with a lot of overlaps, right? When you say Dropbox has this many and Box has this many and Microsoft has that many, there's overlaps among them. And so it's 50 million unique paying customers, paying subscribers today across the business. But there has to be a billion. We have to think about how do we go to a billion. And 1 billion person, 2 billion person markets, the price points have to be very different. And only us playing out of India can think about it that way. So that is why we are fundamentally different from them.
They haven't tried to buy you?
Not Microsoft or Google. They know we are not for sale. I mean, if you want to sell, obviously there'll be many interested parties, but we have made it very clear that we're not for sale. Salesforce tried, but that was way back, like almost 10 years now. We said no, and we were tiny then. Zoho was a tiny piece then. I mean, to their credit, they foresaw something coming. I give them credit for that. But we said we are not going to sell. So.
The other thing I noticed in Zoho's journey is also you actually built a product which could be used anywhere in the world. And some of your early success came in very tough markets outside. Why was that? Why did you not start with India?
Well, we still had, broadband penetration 10 years ago was minuscule. The smartphone did not exist yet. The iPhone only came in 2007. So the environment was not yet conducive in India. But India was there's an explosion of talent coming, so we could use it. So we seek markets where they existed. But we always kept an eye on India. I mean, we are Indian. I mean, we are here. So as the market developed, and we are finding more natural home ground to hunt.
Sridhar, the other thing is, you talked about PayPal mafia. We already see a Zoho mafia.
Yeah.
And a lot of us look at Zoho as the mother from where a lot of software entrepreneurs are coming out. Yeah. And we will get into details in a bit. But what do you think of that in the sense that when people come to you and say, I want to quit Zoho to become an entrepreneur, what do you tell them?
Yeah, I never try to talk them out of it. I mean, I'll say, what can I make it so that you'll stay? But if they are set on it, I always wish them well. And in every case, we parted on good terms. I was aware in 2004, I declared that if we succeed brilliantly, a lot of new companies will be born out of us. As early as 2004, I was aware that this will happen. And I'm perfectly comfortable with this, and I'm happy for our contribution. Because see, we are not just creating a company here, we're creating an institution. That's what I believe. And we're creating a know-how and skill set on how to create products in a variety of areas, how to make them into businesses. Those are all what Zoho is actually teaching. Remember, when I say Zoho University, I think of Zoho itself as a form of a university. Just a different university than something with classrooms and only this. Here there's learning going on all the time. And the other favorite whipping boy for me is the business school. I've said that the most useless degree in the world is actually an MBA, right? Most useless, absolutely. Take it from me. And Zoho has, proved this because we have created so many entrepreneurs. Almost none of them have any of the fancy degrees, MBAs, nothing. And they go and hire similarly, right? They go and hire the Zoho way because they've learned it in Zoho. And so the learning that happened in Zoho. We continue to nurture people like that. And of course, we hope a lot of them will stay. And look, for every person that exists, there are 10 people in Zoho, similar skill set that are there in Zoho. Still, that's why we are growing so fast. So we are aware that we will create more of these, and that's good for India, that's good for Chennai. And so I'm happy about this. I'm actually very happy about this.
There's no secret sauce that you hold on to.
No, there is no secret. Look, the most important secrets are all open secret. There's nothing mysterious or magical about any of this. It just, you have to, like how does a Honda go from a bicycle to a luxury car? It's a systematic process over a 20, 25, 30 years. It didn't happen overnight. If you have that, if you're a 20-year-old, 25-year-old, you have that 25-year horizon, you can do it. But do you have the staying power? Do you have the persistence? Do you have that commitment to that cause? That's what is important.
In your view, what is the future of enterprise software product itself from what you have learned?
Yeah.
Can you paint a sketch a decade down, or a decade out?
Right.
Where are we headed really?
Okay, you think about something like SAP, enterprise software, or even Salesforce, any of these. Like if you want to know how it works, it's an arduous process. You can't even get it in the sense that try to sign up for an account. You'll be qualified and this and that, evaluated, prodded, everything. Your wallet will be weighed before they let you in. That's the truth. Try getting to know what SAP does as a software. It's impossible. It's for an average person, right? It's impossible. Unless your budget is $1 million, they don't respect you. On Zoho, you can come online, 5 seconds you are in. Everything is exposed to you. You can see it. And within a week, you can learn. It has to be that ubiquitous. That's our vision of software. And it has to be that easily accessible. Then what happens is there is a cultural process of technology adoption. It's a cultural process, not just technology. When you think about it, 10 years ago, if anybody had predicted so many smartphones will be sold, this will become the primary internet device in India, and there'll be hundreds of millions of Indians coming online thanks to the smartphone, particularly Android phones, particularly all the Chinese phones, all of this. It's even not believable 10 years ago. In 2007, it was not believable. Yeah. Even in 2010, when we met, the smartphone as an Indian phenomenon didn't exist yet. In just the last about 5 years, it has taken off. And how does a person in a village learn to use WhatsApp and Facebook? They learned it, and these are not trivial things. That's the cultural adoption of technology. If you make software ubiquitous, people learn Zoho CRM to Zoho Books to survey, all of these through that cultural diffusion process. If you make it accessible, ubiquitous, and you also learn how do I make it easier to use for the person for that 50 millionth user who's not going to be able to ask for support. They don't have access to anybody to ask, how do you make it accessible? And in the same way, when you have 100 million users, there is cultural diffusion. If you want to know, how do I take a screenshot on Android? You just go and ask the person next to you, they know how to do it, right? That's cultural diffusion of technology. Google didn't come down and teach us how to use Android. We just learned it, figured it out ourselves. WhatsApp, I mean, they reached 1 billion users with like 50 employees. They didn't take a support call and teach it. So that process will happen in enterprise software as well. I firmly believe it. Our mission is to make that happen.
Godspeed with that.
Yeah.
Sridhar, have there been abject failures in your journey?
Lots of, see.
What are the most successful failures?
Look, a failure is only a failure if you never recover from it. Otherwise, it's only a setback along the way, right? And lots of times, we have gone to try and create a product. Our first attempt internally is a miserable failure. We never ship. Maybe a second attempt is so-so. Then we only ship the third attempt that we make. It has happened. That has delayed our launch of some products. And sometimes some technologies are more complex than we have the current know-how for. Then we realize we have to go create those skill sets, and then only we can get into these areas. So those are all things we learn along the way in the course of this. And so we have had lots of those, and we still continue to have those, and we will continue to fail. Hopefully all of those failures will be internal. I like a lot of internal failures, because then, then we go out in the public, we have a much better offering, right? Interestingly, this technology that makes it easier, right? For example, every product we host it for our own first, our employees. That's now 5,000 people. So you're going to get a sudden influx of people internal, and they're going to be brutal in their criticism, right? If you can't pass that, the product is, you won't ship. You got to make employees happy first, and then we go to the broader one. So a lot of those are all the setbacks, launch pad failures, all of that. We get to do it outside of even the public eye, and that's great that we are able to do that.
Final two questions.
Yeah.
Sridhar, as a storyteller over years, what I see of Indian SaaS or enterprise software product, people are beginning to talk about these two ways of doing it, right? And this new wave is clearly coming from your mafia, Girish of Freshdesk. And they think there's a Zoho way, and then there's a Freshdesk way. Clearly very different.
Yeah.
In every possible way. If someone wants to become an entrepreneur today, bright person, someone as hungry as you, how would you ask that person to look at these two models if they're looking to learn?
First, look at yourself inside. I mean, the answer has to come from who am I question. That's our oldest truth of Indian spirituality, right? It's not about me advising them. It's about what is your inner conscience? What does it say? What does your inner voice say? Listen to that. And choose the path that works for you. I mean, you cannot, look, no one becomes a guru by only taking advice from other gurus. There's no such thing. Gurus will tell you that. Maybe they can point to a path, but you must walk yourself. So ask the who am I question and adopt whatever suits you, suits your internal frame of mind, your philosophy, your values, your religious perspective, if you will. That's the right word here. So adopt that. That's what I will say. I mean, I'm happy to share our experiences, what has worked, but don't follow us. I mean, follow yourself.
That's well said. Well, final question, Sridhar, is while doing this, and I'm asking that question with, sometimes when you ask question, you already have, you are thinking of answers in your mind, so I want to clarify. What is that legacy that you want to build with Zoho, especially given these strong philosophical stance that you have taken? What do you want to be remembered as? What do you want Zoho to do?
Yeah, so as I said, I look at Zoho as an institution. And we want to put down strong roots in our communities, serve customers for a long time. And nothing, look, one thing you learn from Buddhism, nothing is forever. Nothing is forever. Okay. Like this body will perish, one day maybe Zoho will perish. Like everything, right? Everything ends, everything passes. I've made my peace long ago with it. In fact, Steve Jobs said once, right? The thought that you're surely going to die one day is the most liberating thought in the world. That's true, actually. I find this to be true. In some finite number of years, I won't be around. That's guarantee, absolute guarantee, right? So then what, I hope the company lives longer than me, much longer than me, that's my hope. And we want to put down those roots, create an institution, and we want to stand for certain moderation, Buddhist moderation of life itself. What I mean is that, along the way, we also have to have a enjoyed life, enjoy doing it. Like it's an example. I mean, I run a business with 5,000 employees, but I'm not stressed out running. I'm actually enjoying it. I live in the moment. I've always enjoyed it. I've never had a sleepless night about it. I never had stress, all of these.
I think that's one thing I see unchanged in you, I will be honest. Yeah.
So, and this is important for anyone, because if you don't actually enjoy the journey, you're not going to last very long. And similarly, your people have to enjoy the journey. Because if you are going to go pass the stress to other people, well, they won't last in the journey. I mean, I'm proud to say there are people, employees who are now 20, coming up on 21 years from the earliest days. And there's lots of 15 years, 20 years. Because as the company evolves and adapts and changes new technologies, all that, something core remains. And the core is that this whole outlook, this whole thing that we have to, even senior people in Zoho who have actually made, decent amounts of money, live what I call that moderation in lifestyle. That's important. That's important because that then translates into, you don't go overboard, avoid extremes, be moderate. That maybe, hopefully, it'll go on for a long time before it passes. Who knows? Everything will pass someday, right? So.
Thank you, Sridhar. It's really enlightening talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, and Godspeed with everything you want to do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.